Well guys, in today's video I'm gonna be installing P2R's high compression cast replacement D&J pistons. So these are your flat top pistons out of a J35A4, and these I believe are similar to the J32A2 pistons, but they are D&J brand and they are stocked by P2R and they have them on his website. So we're gonna go ahead and try these. These are much cheaper than the Tron forged pistons, but they're nowhere near as strong. So if you've been following along, you already know the reason why we're doing it. You can kind of see that one did it and that one did it. So I believe tuner error, but we're not going to talk about that in this video. That was discussed in prior video. Basically what I got to do is I got to take each one of these to the press the pins out, get the rods cleaned up. I got to check the bore, make sure all these fit in, and I have to check the ring gaps. The ring gap is going to take me the longest, but we're just going to do it a little bit at a time. And I'm not going to set my phone up and do the whole assembly just because it's so tedious of checking ring gaps. So I'm going to do one and show you what I do, and then repeat the process times 6. Well, there you have all the old ones. They're all out. And we have all of our rods. Gotta keep everything right. So the next step is to start with the rings. So I'm going to clean each one of these cylinder walls up very, very well. Since I've honed the hell out of these, I hit these a little bit, but I've really hit these more. So I'm gonna brake clean the shit out of them, scrub them with the blue paper towels until I don't get any more residual stuff, and then we'll start the process of doing the filing the ring gap. So when you're talking about cylinder walls and cleanliness, there's no such thing as being too clean. You absolutely cannot take this out and have any black on it. So we're gonna go in here. We're just gonna sit here and scrub it up and down, all the way to the bottom, all the way around, all the way back. This is just your initial cleaning so you can check your bore, your gap on your rings. Go like this, clean it real well. And if you pull it out and you have any black on it, I got a little bit right there on the tip, but I think that was from when I actually went down to the bottom. That's pretty good. We're gonna do the same on this. If we get any black, any discoloring on the shop towel at all, then you get a new shop towel, spray the cylinders down with brake clean again, and continue on. Because any contaminants that are trapped inside those hash marks will act as sandpaper to your rings. And your engine will not last long at all. Ideally, engine builders have this giant tank where you just dip your whole engine block in it, and it gives it an ultrasonic bath and really hot cleaning solution. I have that option to take it to them. See that little bit of darkness? But I don't want to kind of put them out like that. But I do have that option. But I'm going to continue cleaning, and then we'll start the ring gap process. Alright, so I got the ring in there, and this right here is a 10 thou. And if we come up here to the top where the ring gap is, you can kind of see it in the video. We're going to take this and slide it right in. If I can find it. There we go. See, that goes right in that space. So that ring gap right there is 10 thousandths. It's slightly dragging, but just slightly. So I can swoosh it through. So yeah, that's 10 thou. So that's way too tight. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that up and continue the process with the rest of them. So we're on like take 2 of this because I was talking and I never press record. So here's the here's the ring grinder. You're basically gonna put it in like so. Only grind one side. Keep the ring extremely flush and keep it pulled back to the keepers. We're gonna keep our hands on it like so. and we're gonna rotate it in a counterclockwise rotation. The reason why we do that is because as we take material off the ring, it's gonna create a burr, a tiny little sharp edge on that side of the ring. So if you went forward, then that burr would in turn be on the outside of the ring, and we don't want that because that's where all the cylinder wall is going to be. So when we do counterclockwise, it'll create a burr on the inside of the ring, and then all you do, you take a little piece of emery cloth, 800 grit sandpaper, or a tiny little very fine stone, and you deburr that edge, and then you go check the ring gap again. Now this is going to take me a couple hours to do all these, but this is a very, very important process of assembling an engine, and I want to make sure that we get it right. So bear with me, but I'm not going to show you the whole process, but I'll show you the finished result. Okay, it's been a little over an hour, and I have got 6 rings done. That's it. I was taking my time, and I still got a little too happy on 2 of them. So I got to 29 thou and 27 thou on the second ring. I took my time on the top rings, and I got them all pretty close. But what I learned is the top ring's a whole lot harder than the second ring. So even though this takes like 35 rotations, I went over here and did like 15, and I got that number just in fast. And I'm like, oh Lord. So then I started to slow down, but it's really on how hard you push the ring into it, and it's just a whole lot. So it makes a lot of sense to go slower. But these, I think cylinder 1 and 2 were my hot cylinders, so it's okay to have them a little bit bigger. But the top ring takes all the abuse anyway, so if I get any air trapped in it or any compression trapped in it, fuel, whatever, it's a large enough gap to where it can escape out the bottom, hopefully. So I'm gonna quit for now because it is dark outside, so it's time for me to go home, and I'll get back after it tomorrow. All right, day 2. We are back here again, and I've gotten all these done. Just finished the last one. It is imperative that if you do this, you do it very slow. Had this old school ring grinder, and I ended up using this side of it, and I'll show you the last one. There's multiple videos on how to operate a ring grinder, so I'm not even going to go into that. But basically, you can see that gap right there, and it may seem like a lot, but believe it or not, that's only 25 thou. So this is your second ring. So I believe stock J series, they want like 20 thou on the second. So I opened it up, and I'll show you what I opened most of them up to. So it's also imperative that you take notes. So I got my top cylinders right here, 19, 20, 19, 18, 18, 17, and then my second. That was my first go on the second, and it's a little bit fat. And the only reason being is because the top set of rings are hardened steel and the bottom set are not. So the top ring took me I counted something like 45 rotations, and then the second ring, it would only be like 17 rotations. So the material comes off of the second ring a whole lot faster than it does the top ring. So take that in mind and keep that, in a precaution. As far as the oil rings, I'm going to check them all, but they don't really require much gapping at all. You're not supposed to re-gap these. They're supposed to come pretty much preset, and they're supposed to be like a 2/1000th of a gap or something like that. Real fine. They don't see nowhere near the amount of heat, and they want to be able to, to wipe down the cylinder walls and keep everything lubricated. So they have their job, but I'll check them, but they shouldn't need any adjusting. Now, as far as these being D&J rings and D&J pistons, you have got to 100% gap these. You cannot skip that process, because the top ring and the second ring, I'm going to say most of the top rings had about a 5/1000th gap in them, and most of the second rings had about an 8/1000th gap in them. So you have got to open those up, and it's imperative. So I'm going to go ahead now, since I've already cleaned these 3, I'm going to start cleaning these back 3 really well, and I'll start the process of installing the rods. And another thing I wanted to note, When you take an engine apart or you put it together, you can use plastic gauge and check your bearing clearances. Now, because the motor only had like 90 minutes of runtime on it, my bearings are fine. But here's the thing I noticed. Honda likes to label their bearings color-coded. So that one's green, 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 green. That one's green, but that one's brown. So I assume that this one has a slightly larger tolerance than these. And the only the reason I can kind of understand that would be like it's furthest away from the oil pump. So they want slightly more of a tolerance because, I don't know, it's further away from the pressure. Kind of makes sense in my mind. But I'm going to assume that most of these have like 1.5 to 2 thousandths clearance. And then this one might have 2.5 to 3 thousandths clearance, something like that. But I know they're going to be tight, but I'm not even going to check them because the bearings look fine. I just got to make sure I clean all the rod journals really well from all the trash. So I'm going to get to cleaning and get to putting these things in. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. So as you can see, we got all of the C-clips put in. They're all locked in. I went ahead and double checked them just to make sure. Got our assembly lube put on the pins. And I'm pretty happy with the way it is. So I'm gonna go ahead now and I'm gonna start with hole number 1. Take the rod bolts off and make sure the bearings are clean on the inside and out. Make sure they're lined up and slide them in the bore. So I've got the first 3 in hole. Everything went in smooth as butter. I'm excited. Happy with how it's coming out. But I went ahead and I torqued down these so far. I torqued them down to 42 foot-pounds. I think the book calls for 40, but I went ahead and just put 42 on them. Just a little bit extra. Cool. Now for the other 3.
Shall we begin? Let's begin now. Let's begin now.
Well, the short block is fully assembled. Now I'm just waiting on getting my heads from the machine shop. Make sure those are all good and ready to go. Well, as you can tell, I have got my heads put on. I came here the other day and got the other portion of the video shot, and I didn't have my camera with me, so I went ahead and did that part. Yeah, I could focus a little bit more on it rather than shooting it and installing it all at the same time. But essentially, we went ahead, everybody say hey to Ginger, went ahead and put on these Cometic head gaskets. If you've been paying attention, these are slightly thicker than the originals, only due to the fact that we're running higher compression pistons in it. So we wanted to make sure we had proper valve to piston clearance, which I really won't know until we get the timing belt on it so I can rotate it over to make sure everything's copacetic. It looked like everything was going to be fine. The pistons didn't come above the deck at all. So I'm going to continue on, and we're going to go ahead now. We'll mount the intake runners. I got new gaskets for that. And we're going to go ahead and spray the gaskets with copper spray gasket. I just like that stuff. Any, possible imperfections, whatever, it'll fill those voids. So did the same thing with the head gaskets, as you can tell. So slowly going back together. Finished product. Got them all installed. Went ahead and used the Allen bolt kit from P2R. Made things pretty simple. Still kind of difficult in between here, but it is what it is. It was a lot simpler than the studs with the nuts on them, because getting a 12mm inside here is pretty inconvenient at times. And you always got to remember there's two on this one. So we got the exhaust manifold on this side. Got titanium fastening hardware, also P2R. And then we got the MLS small head gasket. I'm gonna come around on this side. Exhaust manifold gasket. That gasket is beautiful. So I got the surface all clean. We're gonna go ahead and slide that puppy on. I'm gonna go ahead and put this hardware on. Okay, so here we are with the P2R billet fuel rails. And I'm gonna go ahead and install these today. I've got the rest of the engine pretty much ready to go. I went ahead and dropped a 150-degree thermostat in here, and I took out the one that I had, it was like a 180, I believe. So I'm trying to keep the engine a lot cooler. Went ahead and got the EGR block-off plate. I did away with my custom block-off plate, my homemade one. But we're gonna go ahead and install the stock injectors back in the motor. And the reason for this is the original tune that I had set up was for the stock 270cc injectors. Now these also came from P2R, and they sell Fuel Injector Clinic. Now these here are 445s. So I believe these are like 42-pound injectors, where the stock ones are like 20 or something like that. But if I were to put these in with the stock tune, then it would be telling the computer that they're the same size injectors, so it basically be flooding the engine. So I'm gonna go ahead and break the engine in with these injectors, and then when it goes to the tuner in July, I'm gonna swap them out either at the tuners or the day before I take it, and then just pull the car in the trailer and then pull the car in the shop. That way I don't run it with bigger injectors. But we're going that route because of lean conditions or too much timing, don't know what. So I'm gonna address every possible scenario that could have been causing my issue. So I also learned that what I thought maybe my problem was that my spark plug was too hot. So if you look at the numbers on this plug, IZF are 6. 6 is gonna be your heat range. Now a 4 is gonna be hot, a 5 is gonna be hotter, then you get 6. And I was gonna try to go to an 8, but they don't make an 8, they only go to a 7. So the 7 is a colder plug, which will be more steel inside of here. So essentially you see the gap between this steel here and the porcelain down in there. There's going to be more bodied steel here to allow the heat transfer from the plug to then go into the head, and it'll try to prevent this from glowing cherry red and causing pre-detonation issues. I wanted to go a little bit colder than that, but they just don't make them. So I might look into other brand plugs, but for now we're going to drop that to a colder plug and make it a 7. Those are on order. But I'm gonna go ahead now and get these things installed, and then start looking at the fuel pressure regulator kit and get that put in. Fully assembled. Everything we got on it, let's list. So we have the P2R block off plate for the EGR, 150-degree thermostat. We sent the throttle body off and got a larger butterfly installed, and this is kind of tapered. Let's see, we got our AEM fuel pressure regulator. We have our billet fuel rails, if you can see them in there. Everything has been converted over to AN, so all these AN lines. We have our titanium exhaust studs, looking beautiful. On our intake runners, if I can find one, here we go. We went ahead and purchased the Allen bolt kit. It's one of the cheaper upgrades that you can do. They're only like 15 bucks on P2R's website. We went ahead and I believe this is Prank Parts. This is a alternator relocator kit. It takes place of I guess the air conditioning compressor typically goes down here. This would be part of it. We have a improved racing sandwich plate. So this is billet aluminum, will not deform, and it has a 180-degree thermostat on the inside. So this will run to the oil cooler. We have P2R's manual timing belt tensioner. We have an AEM oil pressure sensor here. That is not the brass one, that's the stainless steel. So you'll get better readings from that version versus the cheaper brass one. We went ahead and went with his gasket set here, which is a thermal gasket, help to prevent heat soak up into your intake manifold. We also have larger injectors that will be installed at a later date until we can get the engine tuned for those injectors. So we're going to keep with the stock injectors for now, but I will not race with them.